We're discussing really who rules Europe in the face of its worst ever crisis. With us to talk about it from Rome, Lucio Malan of the ruling PDL party of Silvio Berlusconi. We're also welcoming back a man disillusioned with Berlusconi, Carlo Alberto Brusa, who used to be a member of Forza Italia. Europe editor Christophe Robit is here with us. And Raquel Garrido of the Parti de Gauche, the party of the left, which is fielding a major candidate on the far left in the presidential election. And you yourself are running, but not for president.
No, not yet. No, I'm running for member of parliament for the French citizens abroad. There's a district that goes from Mexico to Patagonia. And because of my professional relationship with Latin America and indeed my Chilean origins, we felt that it would be a good idea for me to run in that district.
All right. We'll be talking about Latin American affairs, I hope, soon.
Well, the Argentinian example is one that I speak about all the time.
Before the break, we were mentioning how the French foreign minister was hinting that to get stability, Silvio Berlusconi had to leave immediately. Well, that's kid gloves when you compare it to what happened back at an EU summit on October the 23rd. Take a look.
What did you tell Mr. Berlusconi? Did he assure you he would implement new reforms in Italy? Are you reassured, now you've heard what he had to say, knowing that Italy is in the line of fire of credit rating agencies?
Nous étions ensemble dans ce rendez-vous. Et comment dit-on?
Sarkozy saying, we were together in that meeting, and how should I put it? We have total confidence in the sense of responsibility of Italy's authorities, be they political, financial, or economic. Christophe, that laughter sure is
a strange
damning.
way to display confidence, indeed, a strange way to display confidence. Yes, this is the kind of scenes you wouldn't have seen in Brussels, I think, even 1 year ago. There seems to be so much tension between leaders. We know that the relationship between Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy is very difficult, not least because of their very different personalities, but also because of a very different vision of what Europe should do or shouldn't do in this crisis.
But there we see like a moment of complicity at the expense of the Italian Prime Minister.
Absolutely. By the way, the Italian Foreign Minister, Mr. Frattini, later on accused Sarkozy of having as a result, lifted the bond yields of Italy, because, of course, these are very, very important, very crucial moments. This is when you understand what leaders think of each other, what they trust or don't trust. But that was a very interesting moment. I think we might see other interesting moments in the coming weeks. You were saying earlier that you were shocked by the fact that leaders were summoned by other leaders. This is indeed not the spirit of the European Union.
And of democracy. I mean, there are many reasons, of course, to mock Berlusconi, but the economic policy of Italy is not one of them, and certainly Sarkozy and Merkel should not be mocking other leaders, elected leaders. This is very bad way of respecting other people's sovereignty, and at the end of the day, what's happening today is that the new explanation that our leaders are giving us to explain the crisis is democracy. Remember, the first explanation was the subprimes. Oh, you know, the bad Americans are getting into credit unsafely. No one was saying that they're working 2 jobs a day, et cetera, and that their wages were very low, and that's why they were getting into those dangerous loans. But anyways, then after the bailouts, we all said, the leaders said the crisis comes from public debt. Well, and now the third phase of the explanation is that the crisis comes from democracy. The fact that Giorgio Papandreou actually only thought of asking the people of Greece their opinion by a referendum caused Sarkozy to say, we are not going to give one single centime of euro to Greece until the situation is clarified. But what situation was that? I mean, the economic situation of Greece, he knew already. So the only thing he was actually asking for clarification about was the use of that democratic tool, which is referendum. It's outrageous.
All right, let me just say, it's not just the French and the Germans, it's the whole of the Eurozone that seems to be now weighing in on what's going on inside Italy. Luxembourg's prime minister, who's the chair of the so-called Eurogroup, showing some tough love after an umpteenth crisis meeting on Monday.
We welcomed the European Commission's decision to intensify its monitoring of the Italian economy, as was decided during the Euro Council of the 26th of October, to intensify its monitoring in cooperation with the European Central Bank. We also welcomed the decision of Italy to invite the IMF to carry out a public verification of its policy implementation on a quarterly basis.
Lucio Malan, how do you feel about the IMF coming to town?
Well, I feel quite not that my ease in this program, because I hear many voices, I cannot see images, I don't know who is telling what, therefore it is hard for me to answer. As for IMF, I think that it is perfectly normal that in a moment where the economies are so intertwined and they are so dependent one on the other, I think it is perfectly normal to have an international authority to certify that our economy is safe and sound, our public debt is safe and sound, as the governor of Bank of Italy has said, and I see that we have nothing to hide. On the contrary, we have to show that we are not Greece and we are not Argentina, especially as it has been suggested. That for the Argentina situation, we should have talked better about what the international banking agency and authorities and monetary authorities did when Argentina did not pay back its debt, and that increased the problems with other countries who are in trouble, but certainly not in the trouble of Argentina.
At the same time, Lucio Malan, we saw last Friday Silvio Berlusconi at the Cannes summit, and did you get the feeling that perhaps he was being dressed down by the French president and the German chancellor?
If you are speaking about that unfortunate episode of the laughters, that has been a very bad episode for Mr. Sarkozy. I think that one head of state should never behave that way, speaking of a democratically elected leader. But I would admire him very much if we did that in front of some autocratic leader of countries where the opposition is put in jail and so on. In that case, I would say, okay, Mr. Sarkozy, you are courageous. Just doing that, it means that is just unpolite, at least in that circumstance. It is not the first time that he behaves inappropriately in an international arena.
Yes, and especially I would add to that the way Sarkozy were looking so much up to Obama. I mean, let us not forget that this whole crisis comes from the United States. If anyone needed an international authority to put some law in order into what's happening, is about the United States. Those new sort of speculative instruments were invented in the Anglo-Saxon financial world, and they're the ones who caused the problem in the first place, and also the rules of absolute freedom of circulation of capital, of course, which brought and imported all of that into Europe. And our leaders, instead of putting that to an end, continue to be the spokesperson of the rating agencies. I mean, if you look at Sarkozy and Merkel, they officially are the spokesperson of Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's, and they're telling them and him, oh, what do you need to do to keep your AAA, hoping that they look like the good pupils in the class and that they will keep their AAA when the actual capacity of paying back has no relation whatsoever with what the rating agencies say. What the rating agencies talk about is the confidence of the markets, but a nation's ability to work, to create, to produce, and indeed to pay back is something else, is something very different from that.
Christophe Robit, we've been talking about how some people believe that it's a choice now between France keeping that AAA rating and saving the euro.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that our leaders are very happy to work as spokespersons for the rating agencies, but the reality, though, when you look at what's happening in Italy, is that the rating agencies are dictating the pace. The feeling we have is that politicians are always one step ahead, one step, I should say, behind the rating agencies. And it is quite extraordinary to see how little power they still hold in their hands. I'm not sure this is a role they wanted, but as far as I can see, this is a reality. If the markets tell you, we don't believe that your country will grow, we don't believe that you will be able to pay back your debt, there is a lot of chances that this self-fulfilling prophecy will materialize.
Unless as politicians, which is our suggestion at the Front Gauche with Mélenchon, you say, let's stop this game. Let's stop this ridiculous game. I mean, what you guys are saying on our ability as France to, what I was saying earlier, to produce, to create, etc., you don't have a say on that. And actually, what we're going to do is that we're going to, if needed, which is not the case of France right now, but if needed, we will restructure. And
right, so
in any case,
the need to review the rules. But I just want to get back to this point about sovereignty. We, at the same time yesterday, were predicting the imminent naming of a new Greek prime minister. The horse trading has since gone into extra time, with some in Athens, it seems, openly rooting for some outside intervention.
We've fallen apart. These are educated people, and they can't communicate with each other to come to a decision.
They don't agree on the prime minister, they don't agree on a lot of things.
It's a case, Christophe Robit, where a lot of ordinary Greeks seem to say, we really want there to be some kind of house cleaning. Maybe it is time to take our medicine. We're hearing that from a lot of circles, even though it is true that we've mentioned before in this show how much the Greeks themselves are suffering under austerity.
Yes, but I don't. I mean, the problem, I think the underlying problem, this is why we see all these tensions, is that we are in this together. There are 17 countries in the Eurozone, and the problem is, and everybody understands how frail, how fragile the Eurozone concept was when it was created. The problem is, okay, Greece could well leave the Eurozone, who knows? Talking about Italy, this already seems unthinkable. Now, I don't know what Greek people can really do or change. I think the only possible thing at this stage is to have a unity government, national unity government, which would bring together all political forces with potentially some amendments.
It is a big risk, though. A national unity government is an enormous risk, because if the left and the right unite for a government, then what's the alternative? When they fail, because they were going to implement that absurd austerity plan.
But what other
so
possibility
they will
do
fail.
you see?
Well, in general, in democracy, you can choose the other side to change government. But you no longer have that choice and possibility when you have national unity governments.
What's definitely certain is that the rules are being rewritten as we go along. Our good friend Paul Taylor of Reuters, in his Insight blog, returning from the G20, with the feeling that an informal get-together that happened a few weeks ago at the going-away bash for the ECB president, Jean-Claude Trichet, has fast blossomed into what he calls a new Politburo for Europe, made up of European leaders, the ECB, the European Commission, and the IMF. Now, here's how Paul saw it in Cannes. In a telltale recognition of the new ad hoc power center, members wore lapel badges marked Groupe de Francfort. U.S. President Barack Obama attended one of the meetings, getting what he joked was a crash course in the complexity of Europe's laborious decision-making processes and institutions. He proved to be a quick learner, one participant said. Lucio Malan, when you see the way the rules are being rewritten in the face of the Euro's crisis, do you think Italy should still be in the Euro? Is it still worth it?
Well, I think that euro should be the currency of Europe, and should be anyway the currency of all the countries that joined in. And it should not be, in the interest of all, the currency of just a very few privileged countries who make the rules for their own sake. That is exactly the contrary of the European spirit that pushed Italy, Germany, and France to found the European Union. That is the ancestors of the European Union in the 50s.
You mentioned that Franco-German couple on Twitter. Magnus Opus looks at what he calls the Merkozy couple and asks the following, because we do have elections coming up in this country, Christophe Robit. If Sarkozy is thrown out, what will happen to that axis between Paris and Berlin?
Very difficult to tell. So far, François Hollande, the nominee for the Socialist Party, has been criticizing Merkel steadily. We don't know whether they would get on better. Some could argue that in terms of personalities, they could get on better. I think Hollande, if he wins the election, would want the left to win in Germany, but that won't be soon, obviously. Therefore, one can ask. I think the Franco-German engine is. It's true. It's a matter of personalities. We saw at the time Kohl and Mitterrand. We saw Schröder and Chirac. But it's also a matter of interest. Even though Nicolas Sarkozy, Angela Merkel weren't made to get on, they had to in the end, and it works somehow. So I think at the end of the day. It is an engine, it has to work, and whoever is in power, I think you will have to find some consensus between the two largest.
Europe will muddle along no matter what, says Christophe Robit. We're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you. I want to thank Lucio Malan for joining us from Rome, and I want to thank Raquel Garrido for being with us.
I'm sorry for being late.
That's okay. Here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. We're going to have more in a moment on the economic issues that are weighing on the governments of Italy and Greece. Marcus Carlson is next.
Photography out of Africa. What springs to mind? Join us as we uncover the continent's secret treasures and talents at the Bamako Encounters Festival in Mali and leave your clichés at the door.
Don't miss Culture, Thursday, 5:15 p.m. Paris time on France 24.